of space left. So you either go up, which is expensive, or down, which is downright hopelessly expensive, or you take out freeway space. And it is an option. You can actually begin to reclaim these freeways. See the stations here, they're quite attractive spaces, they're soundproofed, and already we're getting TODs building around them as, and helping to reclaim those spaces. Phoenix has done a similar thing. It has reclaimed 2 lanes of a major road and built a new light rail down that. I think this is the agenda we've got to take on in this next era. We've got to take out road space and put in decent electric transit. Now, when I started to say I was going to come, various people began emailing me, including David Crossley, and some others who were keen to talk about what to do in Houston. And the idea was posed, can we not take the 180 miles of HOVs that you've got, which indicate that essentially you've got a network of HOVs, but they could be converted to transit, and you would increase the capacity of the system 10 times. But how do you do it? How can you build over and around and so on to make that work? It's hard to imagine. It's a bit of a black swan, but it's possible. And that is the kind of project that you're going to have to start thinking about, I believe. It is political, every step of the way. Rolling out the roads is very established, very easy to do. But it can be stopped. And this is our Minister for Transport, who has done a wonderful job taking the toys from the boys. And particularly, he has reversed the spending, which has gone from $5 on roads, $1 on rail, to reverse that. It's a great film. The reality behind this is that it is a market-driven phenomenon. You don't need to have a more socialist city to make this happen. You in fact need the opposite. You need to stop doing the kind of regulated, planned processes that you've got now and enable the market to come in. This is a new market, but it is one that's inherently there. And talking to the business community this afternoon, very clearly markets are emerging in the TODs and transit-based system. And across the world, these TODs are happening because people want to live in them. Why? Because they use cars 50% less, and that frees up 20% of their household income, because they get one less car. Across America, people living in TODs have 0.9 of a vehicle per household, and outside at 1.7. You save 20% of your income, that's pretty good news. And what happens locally is that money gets spent there. You buy a car, that money doesn't go anywhere in the city here. But the money is spent locally in terms of the local services. So it's a local economic development mechanism, and the value of TODs is retained in the downtimes and good in the uptimes. Lots of projects are now being built by PB Placemaking. This is the group that have helped to fund this tour for me, and they began in Portland with GB Arrington, the planner there, and he has been doing PB placemaking work all across the US, in every Australian city, places like Dubai and in the UK. The big one is Tyson's Corner. This is very symbolic, and in the next few years you'll begin to see this. It's now fully funded. The Dulles Rail will be going through the middle of it, and this was a project motivated and pushed by the business community, who saw this area, which was full of cars, completely stuck in traffic, as a failed model. They want to become a city. So they're putting in 3 TODs, 2 linking light rails and this major metro line through the middle of it. And it will become quite symbolic of what can happen to car-based development as it is rehabilitated and converted into TODs. Tyson's Corner in Washington DC. But if you want to see TODs, go to Vancouver. They're the best examples, I think. This is an area of Perth where the new train comes under here, and this freeway on-ramp has now disappeared because of the train, and immediately that went, the development community got together and pushed the government, and they've come up with a concept of building Dubai there. It's an extraordinary fantasy, and it won't happen because we don't do things like this. but it's something will happen there, and it will be a lot better than a freeway on-ramp. We have much more milder TODs like this with 4 or 5 stories, and they are very walkable environments, and people come from all over the world to see them. We are now building them around the new Southern Rail, out 30, 40 kilometres out, and we've built one already at Joondalup, which is built around the station. This one's an interesting one in Sydney because it is built as a public-private partnership. We've learnt that PPPs often mean toll roads, but they can be built with rail, and the connection is land development. So if a developer wants to be part of a consortium, they can help to build the railway in exchange for the development rights around the station. This one was built with the air rights above the station there. That's happening in Portland and Seattle and parts of the new system in LA. They are doing that. But Vancouver's lost 30,000 car trips a day and gained 100,000 walking, biking trips. And they've done it as much as anything through these dense TODs, which these days are quite attractive to families. They put in 15% social housing as a requirement. Boulder's now up to 40% because it's become an eco-enclave, and they're worried about that because even the teachers can't live there. So they require 40%. So it's not that unusual to say you need to get affordable housing as part of this development. It's hard to do, but you can do it. And the other thing they do that's important is to say 5% of the value of a development should go into social infrastructure. And that means that the developer actually contributes to building around the development, landscape, open space, public art, community centres, schools and so on. And the local community decides that with the local government, which means they get very involved in that change process, and they aren't necessarily against development. Everyone hates density, and they want, or if they say it's a good idea, they don't want it next to them. But if you're going to get something out of it, then perhaps you will. So there's some great examples there. They're very walkable environments and very attractive at the ground level. So I think those cities will do quite well. POD and BOD is pedestrian-oriented development, bicycle-oriented development, and actually I haven't yet seen a pedestrian in Houston. That's literally true, because I was just sort of wished here along freeways. I'd love to go into downtown and have a look around, because I hear that it's become much more walkable, and you can change any part of a city into a more walkable environment. This is Melbourne, where they've won all kinds of awards because of their walkability that's been introduced into the city, and it's attracted capital to the area. The designer was Jan Gehl, the urban designer from Denmark. He's now working in New York, San Francisco and Seattle. If you need good ideas, he's a magician. And he comes from Copenhagen, where they've done a lot of this work. Here's a great example of what you can do. That freeway was built over the top of a river in Seoul, and that river was quite sacred to them. It comes from a sacred hill up here, and it was a great sorrow when it was built, this freeway was built. So a few years back, 5 years ago, the local community developed a movement to try and get rid of this freeway. And they went to the mayoral candidates one year, and one of them said he would remove it, and he got elected. So you can imagine him going to the traffic engineer and the department and saying, take it down. It's very hard to imagine, isn't it, that kind of thing happening. But they did. And they created a beautiful restored river and a public park that goes 6 kilometres through here. They've restored this heritage bridge, and they've restored the buildings, and the value of those buildings, of course, has dramatically increased. And most of the traffic disappeared, as it tends to do when you reduce the capacity. It's a very strange thing, though. Most traffic engineers can't accept that, because they think traffic is like water and it will just channel. So if you take away that capacity, that pipe, it'll just go into other pipes. That literally is how they think. And it's a pity, because traffic engineering should really be based on social sciences, on people, because it's people making decisions. And if the capacity is not there, then you do alternatives, and or you don't go at all. And there's certainly a lot more walking and biking and so on through there. And cities can change, they can adapt. The same thing happened in August, where this arterial road covered the August River, so they dug it up and created a very attractive urban space that was so good to the local economy that the mayor of August has been touring around Europe trying to help other mayors find rivers that they can dig up. The Los Angeles River is going to be restored this way. You've been doing it with bayous. It's an important part of a city, the water flows, and they can be integrated into this whole story. But if you can take out an arterial road at the same time, it's even better. London, I never thought, would become a model or a leader in this area. That's partly the anti-British sentiment in Australia. But this Millennium Bridge was a pedestrian bridge, and right through London now it is much easier to walk and cycle. And they've taken out many of those places where the iron bars prevent you from crossing the road. You know, it's like being in a zoo or something. The real people are in cars, so you've got to be kept away from that. And occasionally people would leap those barriers and get killed. And so this is Kensington High Road, and it's been the sidewalks improved, and you won't see any signs anywhere, any traffic signs. They've all been removed. It's called naked streets, and one of the reasons is that it confuses the driver and slows them down. and you get a better environment for cycling and walking. So the traffic accident rate has halved on Kensington High Road. So right through Europe now they're doing complete streets as a way, naked streets, and in the US they call it complete streets, and that movement is happening right across as well. There are many cities trying to say, how can we reclaim our streets? The Embarcadero has been taken down. It helped with a little bit of natural shaking that helped, but this was it originally. It's gone, and it's now a tree-lined boulevard with a light rail and cycleways, walkways, and cars. So they fit together. It's a matter of imagination And imagination can create green and urban cities that are transformed from the kind of car dependence we've done. Paris wanted to keep up, so they went with the bike solution. 50 million trips on these bikes in the last year. Every 300 metres, you can get one of these bikes with a little credit card. Boulder has done, over 30 years, they've had a commitment to sustainable transport modes, and they've shown what a small town can do. And it is a very pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly city, and a much healthier city, and one that is greatly desired to live in. Copenhagen wins this race, I think. They have been reducing car parking 2% a year for 30 years. Each year, taking a bit more parking out, creating these livable streets, which nobody wants to turn back into car-based streets. When we were driving down here tonight, I could see the start of a street that was getting reduced sidewalks. How that happened, I don't know, but the future has got to be more pedestrian bicycling facilities, not less.
Yeah, yeah.
Copenhagen's a wealthy city. Only 27% of people use a car to go to work. It's getting less each year. God is green-oriented development, and that's really just basic stuff these days. It's so easy to do. Costs a bit more sometimes, but it pays off very quickly. Treasure Island is going to be a whole new eco-city that displays all the American ingenuity in eco-building. And the governor is driving a lot of this. The Mayor of Chicago, of course, has done wonderful things with green roofs. They're up to 220 or so now. And New York's essentially saying we won't build any more buildings unless they're LEED certified. And Green LA has got their commitment to being the greenest big city in America. And Seattle says no, of course, they're the best. They even have eco-strippers, eco-friendly strippers. I don't know what that means. The Chinese are rapidly seeing this new economy emerging. They've got a number of demonstration cities. They're putting $1 trillion into transit. Their response to the downturn is a stimulus based entirely on funding new rail systems through all their cities. Dogtan is an entirely new green city being built as a model. Mazda in the Middle East, similarly. Probably the best place I've seen is Vauban in Freiburg, Germany, which is 5,000 households. It's they make more renewable energy into the system than they consume. It's a family-friendly place. It's got all these new technologies, and it's got one place only where you can park a car, in the solar garage. And there you have to buy that space. It's $20,000 to purchase, and that's the only place you can park. The rest of the development is completely car-free. What it means is that a third of the development, which is normally bitumen, is no longer needing to be bitumen, and it's so much more attractive in terms of bushes, parks and gardens, and it has very good light rail and bicycle facilities. Malmo is a city in Europe, Bedstead in London, that are demonstrations. We've got some very good green buildings as well. You just have to make it part of all the TODs that are done. Now, I'm nearly at the end, and I did want to raise this one because electric vehicles are going to happen very quickly, and they are important. You do need to try and change your city, and that will only happen as you build electric transit. But there will still be a lot of driving, and that has to be replaced in terms of fossil fuels as well. I don't see much future in cities for biofuels. They will work out in regional and agricultural areas. But electricity is going to be available to us to use for private transport as well. And the system is being called V2G and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. V2G stands for vehicle to grid. If you want to look more on this, Google Better Place. It's a firm that's doing a lot of this work. It's based on the idea that renewables needs to be part of our cities, and it is growing rapidly. Both solar and wind and geothermal, wave power, but storage has been the problem. Up until now, you couldn't get more than 15 to 20% of a grid with renewables. You've got a lot of wind power down here, but you're really reaching capacity. You can't do any more because it fluctuates. The answer is storage, and it has come in the form of a black swan called the lithium-ion battery, which is in your mobile phones and computers and is now going into cars and buses and bikes. It's a remarkable invention because it is light, it is long-lasting and very efficient. It is the storage mechanism that people have been looking for. So what happens is that you'll get a contract with your electric vehicle which will guarantee that the power is going to be renewable. This is happening now in cities around the world. And you will plug in at night at a very low rate because the grid is shedding power. You have the opportunity to take power when it is quite cheap. And then during the day, you will drive to wherever you need to be, and then you will plug it in. And when it's plugged in, the storage mechanism becomes part of that grid and becomes available to the grid. And there's 200 kilowatts of storage in each of these batteries, so it's a lot. You only need about 20% of the vehicles in the city, and you can be 100% renewable. You need a smart grid, smart meters and a smart grid that where the system goes two ways, and it traces the peak as it goes up. You just need to be able to pull back some of that electricity from the storage, and it's right where it's needed. You don't have to bring it in on long transmission lines. So it's actually very smart. It will use considerably less electricity than we needed before, and it depends on these digital control systems. We need good broadband and so on to make it work. So it'll only happen in cities. You will be able to do some travel further out with exchanging batteries in various places, but it will become a very important part of the future in our cities. Now, I don't think you build freeways for it though. I think there will be less vehicle use, and we will need to adapt to an electric transit city as much as an electric vehicle city, but they will both be there, and they both enable us to have this radical transformation in power. So the 100% renewable city is coming. Israel is going to be the first place to do it. They have a problem with oil and the surrounding areas that don't particularly like them to take oil. Denmark is a model renewable energy country, and they've got to the limit, 20% they've reached. They want to go to 40%, and the only way they can do it is with this storage. And 3 Australian cities are being set up as demonstrations as well, with a utility and a bank providing the finance that will enable people to fit in with it. Better Place is providing the software through the system that makes it work. We've got a development with 20,000 households which will be demonstrating this in Perth. There will be, I think, some more eco-villages, particularly colonising some of those fringe suburbs that are dying. Eco-villages are able to demonstrate all of the resilient city structures that we've been talking about. And finally, travel demand management, TDM, is a whole range of new technology. Telepresence, as we get the broadband facilities, to be able to meet without travel is going to be important. I'll talk to you next on the television. Probably won't replace all of the need for personal contact, but there will be a lot of follow-up meetings and so on that will happen through our computers. And Travel Smart is a Perth invention that has shown that travel demand management can work at a household level. So about half of the households in Perth, which is 1.5 million people, have been through this Travel Smart program. You essentially have the opportunity to talk to someone who's a bit of an expert about the public transport system, bicycling, walking, and will help them provide them with bus tickets and show them with how to get in a bus. Some people don't know, and why their kids should be walking to school and so on, and to help them organise things called walking school buses. There's 20 walking school buses in Perth, and the other day I was in Auckland and found there were 200. It's a smaller city. One person in the local government organised this, and it is a way in which kids can enjoy the whole process of walking to school in safety. But when you think about that, free-range kids, Vauban is a classic example of a place where it's not just free range, the kids are feral. They just go berserk, really, because there is no need to worry about cars. And I think it is an indication that you can have a city that's green and more urban, more opportunities, and also a better place to live. So we need imagination, we need these black swans, we need post-oil strategies. Certainly Houston will have a terrorism strategy like most cities, but I bet you don't have a post-oil strategy. And you need partnerships. Every area of our economy needs to change to be part of this. We need lots of stories about it, and that's why we write our books, to tell those stories. And we need hope. It's underlying that. And I do believe that you now have that opportunity in this country. Thanks very much.
And I think we have time for just several questions. I'll try to bring you the mic and then bring it back.
You've managed to get these, all the transit systems, the electric transit systems to carbon neutral. And as you know, most electricity here is coal power. How do you do it? How does that work?
Yeah, we talk about the carbon neutral city and give lots of examples. In Calgary, their light rail is entirely powered by a wind power system. It's just a matter of where you purchase your power from. So you can do that. Any transit company can go carbon neutral, and that doesn't mean that you don't use carbon, it just means that you offset it. And offsetting is something I haven't talked about here, but I'm a big supporter of it because the plantings that are now occurring in response to that are being joined up into biodiversity systems that go right across our state, a very important part of the rehabilitation of our farmland areas. And big companies and companies like transit agencies can do that. Now I have I don't have it on me, but we have a smart card which we use for our transit system. I don't know if you have that here, but a plastic card which can, you just you know, flash it past a sensor and it. You got it here, okay. Now that is fed into a computer. So I have one that where the money for my transit usage just gets taken out of a bank account. I don't ever have to add to it or anything. And the computer adds up the number of miles I do on the transit system. Now if you've got a carbon neutral transit system, they are green miles. They are worth carbon credits. And a good transit system is able to join into that kind of program in the future. That's the kind of thing, the new world that's emerging. This year I'm sure you'll get a carbon trading system set up, and certainly there will be a worldwide one beginning soon, and will be part of the Copenhagen agenda. And there's no reason at all why a transit agency couldn't make money out of the carbon credits that are associated with using a carbon neutral transit system.
Back.
I don't think I need it, Mike. What are the motor fuel taxes in Australia?
The what?
Gallon, or US gallon? Motor fuel taxes?
We're second to the US in having very low fuel taxes. Yeah.
And you've done all of this with low fuel taxes?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's all about politics, and in our city, in Perth, we just desperately needed a good rail system, and it just got to that point where people said, we've got to do this. Now, if you did a survey in Houston, you would find similar results. Across America, people want money spent on transit. They may be actually wanting other people to use it so that the roads are freer, but that's what they're saying. They don't want new roads, they want transit. Now, that's certainly the case in Australia. It's a matter of getting the government's mechanisms to make that happen, because the lobbies are so in the ear of the politicians, they just sort of roll out the system as though that's what people want. They don't necessarily.
We could build a lot of mass transit with $3 increase of $3 taxes on motor fuels.
Yeah.
For a while, there won't be many cars left, but 30 years.
That may be what's going to happen with setting this floor price. If you have a floor price of $80 to $100, the price of oil, how do you do that? Well, it's probably a tax that maintains it at that level if it goes below. In which case, what do you do with the money? Well, you put it into something like transit. Why not? Yeah.
There's a handful of us here from a local municipality, not the city of Houston, but from another one. And we're in the middle of conversations with our council members, with our elected officials, to develop a policy for energy efficiency, transportation, protecting natural resources. And we're butting heads on the terminology. You use sustainability. My council would like to use environmental policy rather than sustainability. Could you talk to me a little about your differences of using the word sustainability versus environmental?
Yeah, let me tell you a bit of history first. America invented the environmental movement as a profession, as a part of government policy. You were the first to set up EPA with environmental regulation, environmental monitoring and controls, environmental law. When Reagan came to power, there was a movement across the world to set up sustainability as the approach, which said, let's now integrate environmental matters into the whole decision making. So they're not just there to stop things, it's about what you do to actually bring a positive environment to bear. That movement was stopped in the US by Reagan. He withdrew the two members of the Brundtland Commission, who were American, and banned the use of the word sustainable development in all government activity. It's very hard to know why, but there was a State Department official who said he thought it was because Nancy had a dream, which said something about the UN being an evil organisation. So what that meant was that the US actually didn't use that word and actually lost global leadership in that area. It moved to Japan, to Canada, to Europe, even Australia, where sustainability was being worked out, and it was quite hard, a concept to come to terms with. Now, I believe it will come back in a rush now, because it is a word of our time, and globally, we have been wanting US leadership in this area. And it hasn't been, and it's partly because you haven't had the ability to think through it. You've had other concepts like green growth and smart growth, but they're not the same. I would try desperately to use the word sustainability. If not, you can use the word resilience. It's quite a good word, and but it's not environmental. It's much more than that, and we really have moved on from that. So try to avoid that one. It's really a link back to the 70s or something like that.
I will pitch resilient.
There you go.
Yeah, sustainability, and as you see in all that I'm saying, it is a better economy, it is a better environment, and it's a better community. All three together, and they don't get traded off. They actually have a synergistic effect. It's a magic idea because it is, you are able, when you start to think that way, to create better worlds in general. We don't have too many people who can say they're trained in sustainability, but universities still don't turn them out very much. They're still in their separate professions. But where they are, and where people become sustainability experts, you can come up with some magic solutions. So communities understand it. You have to, in your own household, you don't just optimise the budget. You try to make a good environment for your kids. You try to have a budget that works, and you try to have something that is a good community. And those three things are intertwined, totally. We just don't do it in our cities and nations.
Maybe one more question?
What do you do about short-hop airline travel?
We are not a model. Europe and Japan faced the oil crisis in the early 70s and decided to head down the track of fast rail and have shown that that works. It clearly is better than short hop air travel. In Australia we have done pretty much the same as the US, and we are very vulnerable now to that. We have proposals to now begin to upgrade our fast intercity rail services. And I think that in the next decade, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. There's no reason at all why you couldn't do that here. Have all the best of American ingenuity that goes into a fast rail system that is attractive. You've got all the internet, and you can get coffee and talk to your friends and be travelling at the same time. It's not a diminishing in quality of life, I think, to have that. Do you want one more? There was one that couldn't be. Okay, one more.
You're now adding the word equity to the 3 E's of sustainability. During meeting the environment, as you know. Can you give us some examples quickly, or just talk about how the standard of living for families across one of the top or a city was actually increased through these sustainability efforts?
Yeah, you'll find a lot of that in our book. We do try to emphasise the equity side of it, and that not just that it will be good for the economy, but part of equity is partly associated with that. We collect data on cities, as I showed you there. One of the factors that we collect is what is the proportion of the wealth of a city being spent on transport. And that is now becoming a standing thing that is collected across American cities. What you find is that the further out you go, the higher that proportion. And in parts of Atlanta, it's 40% of a household income is going just on getting around. In the cities of the world that are very car dependent, the average is around 20%. So in Houston and Atlanta and so on, it's up around 20% of the wealth of the city is just getting public and private transport moving around. Not external costs or anything, just purely the upfront costs. In cities like Tokyo, Singapore and Hong Kong, highly transit oriented, it's only 5%. So only 5% of the wealth. So the more transit you get, the wealthier is your city. That isn't the way most people tend to think. They think that somehow transit is a loss of funds, and if you build more private transport then, and more freeways, that the economy will gain. Our numbers don't show that. So you will generally make a more equitable city possible if the more transit you have. Not just because the poor can get around, but because you all will have more wealth available in the city. It is an important principle. The reason that TODs work is because they are more equitable places. You do not get dominated by the car. The car is still available, you still have all that wonderful flexibility, but you have the other options available. So you have more opportunity. And equity is really about opportunity, isn't it? That opportunity should be available to everyone, which is why the TODs need to be built across the city. And you need to build good transit systems right out to the suburbs and make TODs right out there. You're starting. The system is underway. Don't give up. It's a long way to go. But in 20 years, you could rebuild the city. That's the goal you need to set yourself. And just aggressively build it. Good luck.
Thank you all very much for coming. If you haven't already done so, we did launch a new website at HoustonTomorrow.org about a month ago, and you can get involved in the discussion about building a better Houston. Thank you all for coming.